Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is Michael Bell back from Torque Performance, and today I just wanted to. I watched a few videos because I'm wanting to start to flip bikes, and I've worked on bikes, ATVs, for years, and I've owned a few motorcycles, bought a few motorcycles, and when I was on YouTube, I watched a few videos on what to spot when you're working on or when you're going to buy a bike from a private party seller. And I thought I could just do a video with a bike that I have stored in the garage and show people some signs of what to look for if you're going to buy a bike from a private party and not a dealer. The reason I chose this bike, we could have done this video with a couple other bikes, but this bike has actually, I've wrecked this bike once in front of a police officer and had it slide about 3 or 4 houses down the road. He got it all on camera. But I'm pretty sure this bike was wrecked before I bought it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of walk you through some stuff, and I've taken some notes, and yeah, we'll just go from there. But I kind of want to show you some signs to look for, some stuff that you can identify stuff immediately, which could either help you with negotiating the price with the seller, or it could make you back away from the deal. Don't ever be afraid to back away from the deal. It's your money. You want to do what you want, when you want with it, and don't ever be pressured to buy a motorcycle. So yeah, we'll get into this. Not real sure how I'm going to shoot this video, but I'll give you some tips on some things that I know right away on this stuff. It's a fun bike until you wreck it. Now, one of the first things I always want to ask the seller or look at when I'm buying a bike is the tires. A lot of people don't think, if you're not familiar with motorcycles, tires can be expensive. The average tire, especially for a sport bike, $300-400 for a good set of tires. That's without mounting and balance them. So, really what you want to do is just get a good look at the tire. And then I've actually bought tires that have been really jacked up. If you're not familiar with this process, you really might want to go to a dealer just to buy your bike. But, just kind of feel the tire, make sure it's not like dry rotted or has a flat spot in it. You'll notice a flat spot, especially with a bike that has been stored for quite a while. You'll see it in the tire, and if you get it on the road, you'll feel it. It's real apparent, usually in the front tire, not as much as in the rear. But you just want to feel the tire, make sure it's conical. You don't want it to be real bulged up in the middle where it's just been jacked up. So just check your tires. I mean, tires really don't make or break a deal, but you're looking at $300, $400, $500 for tires on these things. And on a lot of bikes, another little detail that you can kind of do is take the seat off. A lot of bikes, the battery is located underneath the seat. That's not always the case in a lot of different bikes. They do move the battery around, especially on sport bikes, in different areas. You can find them down in the front fender, even toward the rear of the bike, somewhere spaced in between, but usually it's located underneath the seat. And what you can look for when you're looking underneath your seat, your computers are usually all underneath of here. Look for like cut wires, frayed wires that have been pinched together, and ask questions to the seller. The seller really, when you're making a deal, is really vitally important that you negotiate with the seller. So you need to know what you're talking about with the seller. The seller isn't describing what's on the bike. They're either trying to flip it or something. You just run into all kinds of problems with that. So here's another one that you want to do is talk to the seller. Talk to the seller on the phone before you go over there. Make sure that the title's okay. And I've never actually done this. There's a guy on the internet called SRK Cycles, Bikes and Beards. And he made a real good point. He flips a lot of bikes. He's got $1 million worth of bikes. And he usually makes them, the sellers send them a copy of the title to make sure there's no title issues. And I'm like, oh my God, I wish I would have thought about that. I've actually gone to a deal and the person didn't have title. And I bought the bike without a title, and it was a big mess around. And I don't want to tell you what I did, but I'm going to tell you. I had to buy a whole nother frame and get a title off and change everything over to a titled frame. It was a big hassle. I live here in Illinois, and I hate to compare the Secretary of State to basically the Nazi Party, but man, I'll tell you, here in Illinois it's so difficult to do anything if you don't have a title. If it's a lost title, blah, blah, blah. I've also run into sellers that they have an item and they don't have a title, and then they try to tell you how to get the title. If the seller doesn't have the title, right there's a prompt giveaway of why don't they have the title, and why aren't they doing and getting the title to the vehicle instead of me doing it, by you going through another set of hands, I'm telling you, in Illinois, it's just not worth it unless you're going to do what I just told you, and I don't recommend switching frames out. When you call the DMV and start asking questions, they start asking you questions. So yeah, and be aware of your situation and your environment. I used to clean carpet, so we would go anywhere at any time for money. So I've been in some pretty rough neighborhoods. When you're going to buy something, you want to be aware of who you're talking to and where you're going. You know, with technology on the internet, you can GPS and locate all that, but never be pressured into a deal. And if you don't feel comfortable, walk away. Walk away. It's not worth it. But yeah, I'm going to start doing that. I'm going to make the sellers basically start sending me titles to vehicles if I'm interested. Because if you go to drive 3-4 hours away and they end up having a title problem, or the bank has the title, and my EBR 1190SX that I sold, the bank did have the title to that bike, and the seller was completely aware with it. And he actually, what happened was I paid the bike off and then he showed up, but I sold him the bike for what I owed on the bike just to get rid of it and to get the insurance off of it. And when I got the title, they had the title labeled as a Buell instead of an EBR, which was completely incorrect. I didn't know that because I financed the bike, and the bike, when it got financed, the title work went to the credit union, and then the credit union went and held the title, and they don't know what an EBR 1190SX is. American-made sport bike, one of the most badass ones I've ever ridden. But yeah, so your title work's got to be on key, and the VIN number. We'll get into the VIN here. There is always 2 identification numbers on a bike with the VIN that you can run. There's always a sticker, and there will always be a stamp on the neck of the motorcycle. It'll be on the left or right side. It's almost always accessible, so the police can just come in and identify the motorcycle VIN for your registration or whatever. And there's usually a sticker. Now on this bike, it's probably on this other side. There's a few stickers on this bike. 136 61. This would be the other identification sticker on this bike, but it could possibly be lower below, or it could be anywhere on the bike, but there's always 2 identifications. So make sure you check on your VIN that the title matches the one on the neck for sure, because you don't want to get into any title problems with these things, buying these bikes, and then you travel 4 hours and then all of a sudden somebody doesn't answer the phone. And here's another deal when you're buying a bike is you want to look for leaks of any fluid whatsoever. It's real important to know what you're buying, and a lot of these bikes, these sport bikes, they're all covered in panels. So you've got to look for leaks of oil, antifreeze, coolant. Just because it may have a leak, it may not be that big of a deal. So really, you're going to get dirty if you're going to do this. You know, you just need to lay on the floor like this and get underneath of it and start looking around. And actually, if you want to bring a flashlight, that would be pretty good to bring a flashlight too. But just because a bike is leaking fluid doesn't mean that's a deal breaker. Again, with that EBR 1190SX, the thing never leaked fluid when it was hot and running and the temperature was good. And when I stored it for winter, there was a radiator hose that run from the top of the head to the bottom of the cylinder, and it was clamped together with a band clamp. And when it got real cold, to 30 degrees, I go outside and it started leaking. And when you'd run the bike and warm it up with the rubber hose, it would stop leaking. So it did leak a little bit of fluid, but it wasn't a big deal. So, and it never leaked a large amount. So you really need to know what you're looking for on this. And then we'll go to the gas tank. You really need to smell the gas in the gas tank and make sure, if the person says it's been stored, you can smell if it's bad gas. And another identification, if the bike's been repainted, the painters hardly ever paint the inside of the gas tank from the gas cap underneath the lip. They just tape it off so the top of it's painted. So you can actually see that when you're buying a bike. Open the gas cap and look, and if there's a different color there, then that gas tank the whole bike's been repainted. And the average person does not repaint a perfectly good bike. There's something that has happened that has caused the repaint of the bike. Because really, when you're going on these deals, you're probably going to Facebook Marketplace, you're going to Craigslist, I can't remember the other one that you can go on to buy a bike. But you're going on the word of these people, and you really can't trust anybody unless you actually know them. It's really hard to trust anybody because they're just trying to get money. You know, who knows what their situation is. So, you know, don't make your problems mine. So, yeah, you got to be real thorough with this and be prepared to get dirty. Bring gloves and a flashlight. You need to look everything over with a flashlight. And when you're looking everything over with the flashlight, like on this side here, you can see where rust has started on this frame, and this frame's really nicked up. Swing arms are always a good identifier for identifying damage, because this bike got laid over on this side and it damaged the swing arm. But like down here, you know, you've got a little bit of rust on these bolts, and this will identify that this bike has sat outside at some point in time, which it has. And you will start to get rust on bolts or washers. A lot of people, I'm not going to get too much into Harley because I'm not really into Harleys, and I've never sold a Harley, but Harleys are chrome. You can identify that stuff on a Harley real quick from pitting on the chrome and whatnot. And like this bike was damaged here, you can see where it got repainted here. And another thing is look for brake levers. Make sure brakes work. Right here you can notice that the brake lever has been scraped up. That's a key identifier. This is why we're doing this on this bike. This handle grip has no bar end. But this side of the grip, guess what? It's got a bar end. Okay, something's happened, something's leaked. You know, you want to turn the key on, make sure the lights work, the turn signals work, you know, and just try to identify damage. A lot of times mirrors get scratched. Foot pegs get changed. These foot pegs got changed because the original ones got damaged when they got laid over to the side. Here's the original on the back. Here's the ones on here. Sometimes you change foot pegs, but you know, these are key identifiers. Pull on your panels a little bit. This one here, key identifier. Look how it come off. Bike's been wrecked. Still looks good. If you didn't know that, you wouldn't know that panel's broke. Turn signals have been changed. A lot of times you can run into problems when somebody switches from an LED from a 12-volt system. They don't know how to wire it properly. They think, oh, I want to look cool, you know. So, yeah, you just got to look for paint and damage and everything else, you know. And mirrors really are a key identifier too, when you scrape up the mirrors, because a lot of people don't. Well, this is the first thing they replaced. Maybe it's got aftermarket mirrors. Maybe there's damage to the forks. The bike may look legit, and then all of a sudden you come down here, look at the scrapes on the forks. The bike got laid over on this side. You know, the forks are, you know, fairly expensive. That could cost you $1,000 to replace the forks, so you don't replace the forks, but you replace everything else cosmetic. Just key identifiers of damage to the bike. You just got to look everything over and, you know, make sure you kind of know what you're doing. Okay, that's pretty much it. The other thing really, you know, like on these forks here, and I saw this on the other video, which I don't really do. On these sport bikes, you have these upside down forks, so it's a little more identifiable than your regular forks, like on a cruiser type bike. But look for like fluid on the fork tube here. If there's fluid on the fork tube, then your fork seals probably need replaced, a couple $100. Just because a bike's been wrecked and you know it's been wrecked and it's got a little damage, shouldn't deter you from buying the bike. You can actually negotiate on the price with that. Tires, you really need to consider the tires too. A lot of tires, you know, the tires I have on that Aprilia right next to that camera, they're only good for 2,000-3,000 miles. They're real soft tires. They're not real expensive, but you need to know what you're buying. Sometimes people, especially people that aren't into motorcycles, like I'll just walk away from a deal. But they're like, they look it up on the internet, they've never really rode a bike, and they think, oh my God, this is it. This is my bike. This is my motorcycle. They've never even rode a motorcycle. They're judging it by looks. This bike could have complete problems. You really don't know what you're getting into when you're just getting started. So if you don't feel real well, the beagle's barking. If you don't feel real well, like you can handle this kind of stuff and you're not real good with people, I am going to recommend go to the dealer. Now you're going to pay a little more at the dealer, but you have a respectable place to go and repair your motorcycle at a dealer. I'm not against going to a dealer. On my regular car, I don't even work on my car. It goes right to the dealer when I have problems. I have to use that thing for work. It goes right to the dealer. But motorcycles here in Illinois, you ride them 6 months, 7 months out of a year, and then they get stored. So they're kind of a novelty play type toy. And then I'd really like to make a video about financing. I'm not a big fan of financing motorcycles at all. If you're financing a motorcycle, then you're probably having some kind of income problems at home, and I'm going to make a video about this. There's a way to cut money out of your budget so you can afford what you want, but you got to want it. I've bought motorcycles through financing before, and it's really, really, really hard to swallow that $200 payment on the motorcycle and that $100, $140 super bike insurance payment for full coverage when there's 4 foot of snow on the ground. And a lot of times when people don't ride bikes and then they get a bike and they're married and they have kids, all of a sudden wife wants a new refrigerator, so the wife manipulates the guy, and he's got kids and he really wants to make his wife happy, so the bike goes up for sale. And then they owe money at the bank, and then they don't have the title. So yeah, there's just some things that you need to look for, and hope this video helped you. Leave a comment or like below. There's more to come. I kind of like making these vlog type videos. Any knowledge that I have in my head, I'm trying to get out there on the internet. I'm working on my presentations. I know I say and a lot, so I'm working on that. But yeah, hope this helped you out, and yeah, don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell.